This is Susan Fullmer with University Pulse and All Things Woo-Woo. As you have probably figured out by now, if you're finding this on YouTube, we're having some technical difficulties right now with our studio on campus. So while that's being fixed, I decided, well, we're going to go ahead and do this interview anyway because I'm talking with a really amazing woman today. So we're pre-recording this show, and I'm going to find a place on YouTube, and so you can go there and listen to it if you'd like. Today's guest is Maria Anderson, who is a wellness facilitator. Hello, Maria.
Hi, Susan.
Maria and I go back a ways. Full disclosure here, we are friends, so I'm totally biased to this woman. But as far as being in, yeah, just a little. But I'm not going to let that stand in the way of a good interview here. She is, we're going to get into what she does, but generally she's an energy healer and reader and wellness facilitator, as I said, and she's going to go into what that means exactly. But as a friend, I love her dearly, but as a healer, I respect her very much and go to her myself sometimes when I need some help, and I certainly would not hesitate to refer anyone to her. Maria, I'm just so grateful that you're here and sharing your precious time with me. I know you own your own business and you're a busy woman, so thank you for coming on the show today.
I'm excited. This is wonderful. I'm so glad we could connect.
Yep. Now, she's out of Portland. She does see clients all over the world. So Boise's not far when you talk technology, right?
That's exactly true. That's the whole part of what I do, is to be able to give this to everybody and anybody that is looking for a transformation in their life. And so to have that accessible to them, especially in places that, you know, they don't have anybody like me in their area, you know.
Yes.
So that makes it really nice to know that all they need to do is pick up a phone or jump on video chat and they have access to me.
Yes. And I like what you said about helping people find their passion and their purpose, which I know is central to what you do. And so we're looking today at, and if you guys want to go to my Facebook page, it's All Things Woo-Woo, spelled WOOWOO. And I've got some pictures of her there, and she's doing some healing work and all that good stuff. Also some links to how you can connect to her if you ever want to talk to her. So we are looking at a very successful businesswoman here who is living her passion. But because I'm a little insider here, I know that it hasn't always been that way for you. And I talked to her beforehand, and she said yes to this. I've asked her if she would share a little bit of the before story, where she came from. And so take it away, Maria, if you would. Please tell us some of your story.
Well, yes, it hasn't always been this way. When I was born, I had intuitive gifts. I was very sensitive to energy, but I also was born into a family that was very religious, and in their faith, they truly believed that people who had those kind of gifts were given those gifts by the devil or were very evil. And so I made a conscious choice at a very, very early age, probably even in the womb, that I knew I could never speak to my parents about what I knew, felt, saw, and understood. But because and I didn't have a language to really describe what was going on with me, because no one around me, the only language that that was available to me was that this is evil, this is bad. So imagine growing up in an environment where you are constantly at war with yourself because you feel you're evil or you're bad. And again, I didn't have a point of reference. So it didn't mean that the energy that I was sensing was bad. It probably was good energy, but I didn't have a language to say otherwise. So
no structure. That's pretty heavy for a kid.
Yeah, and I was extremely terrified my whole entire life. I mean, I was constantly sneaking into my parents' room, sleeping on the floor because I could just sense energy, and in my world that only meant bad. I mean, even up to the age of 16 years old, I mean, I was terribly frightened all of the time. Plus, it really gave me, I really struggled with a sense of confidence because how could I trust myself if I had this evil thing inside of me? And I know that might sound really weird, and trust me, I'm not anti-religion in any way, shape, or form. This is just the experience that I had as a child. So that really led me not to trust my instincts. That really led me not to trust my inner voice, which really caused me a lot of problems later on in life.
How so?
Well, you would think, you graduate high school and you're ready to graduate and you're like, oh, I am just going to conquer the world. I had all of these hopes and dreams and all these things I wanted to do. I mean, heck, I was the prom queen. I was senior class president. I was co-captain of the cheerleading squad. I mean, you would think that with all of those things, and I even married the prom king, okay? You would think, wow, this girl is going to have a happily ever after. That was just totally not the case. After I got married, I wound up spending the next 10 years of my life in an extremely abusive relationship. So much so that I truly did not believe I would get out alive. And when I finally did find the strength to leave that relationship, I was destroyed. I was totally destroyed. I had no self-confidence.
How could you not be? Wow.
I was suicidal. I was depressed. I had PTSD. I didn't even know I had PTSD until a veteran said, oh, you have PTSD too? And I'm like, no, I don't. He's like, yeah, you do. Like, oh, I guess I do. I wasn't sleeping. I mean, I was a wreck. I was a wreck. And I knew that statistics said that I was likely to continue to repeat the pattern of abuse throughout my life. Well, if anybody knows me, I am very strong-willed, and there was no way in hell I was going to be a statistic. I couldn't do that. At this point, I had 2 children. When I left that relationship, I had the clothes on my back. I had little income. I only had a high school education. I had limited resources. What was I going to do? I have 2 kids. How am I going to make a life for them? And how am I not going to, drag them through another dysfunctional relationship? So at that point in my life, I had to get real, and I had to make some conscious choices. And the choice that I made was, at that moment in time, was I need to figure out how not to repeat this pattern.
That's pretty insightful, given how traumatized you were at the time. I know that your life was in danger more than once.
Yeah, there are many times when I did not think I would see the next day. Many times. And don't get me wrong, this is not an overnight process. This is I just woke up one day and this is going to happen. No, it took me and even after I left, I would tell people all the time, I still think that I'm not going to get out of this alive. I was constantly looking over my shoulders for years. I can remember the first night that I slept through the night, I woke up terrified. I jumped out of bed. I looked for my kids to make sure that the kids were okay, that everything in the house that I was staying at was okay, because I had never slept a full night. I've always slept with one eye open all of that time, because I needed to be on high alert all of the time. And obviously that amount of stress caused physical problems for me for many, many years. But like I said, I had to make a conscious choice. And when I made that conscious choice, something that I noticed was, I decided at that moment in time, you know what, I'm going to be a nurse. And the reason I wanted to be a nurse was because I felt like if I was on the inside track of nursing, I would have access to doctors and nurses, and I would really get an understanding of how to create wellness for myself, how to really beat this thing. And I wanted to help other people. I wanted to help other people be well. But I quickly realized, listen, I'm taking all of the medicine, I'm doing all of the therapy, and how come I'm not well still? And I just couldn't figure out, hey, I'm following all your rules, but I'm still not feeling well. How is that possible? I knew we had to be missing something, but I just wasn't really sure what that could be. Well, I decided well, I really didn't decide. I started learning about energy medicine. And it kind of came into my life, and my motto is follow the breadcrumbs. And what I mean by that is we all have this inner GPS, this inner knowing, this inner voice. But because of circumstances like mine, we learn not to trust that. We learn not to hear that. We learn not to see, these breadcrumbs that are being laid out before us to follow. We don't trust it. Why would we? But I started to really see these breadcrumbs very clearly. Like, things would happen. Like, I would just keep hearing the same term. Around that time, I was hearing the term Reiki all the time. And I never heard of Reiki. And then for all of a sudden, for me to hear about Reiki. And mind you, at the time, I'm living in upstate New York, where there's more cows than people. Okay? And so it's just like, okay, what is Reiki? And so I wanted to learn more about it. And it was like, oh, this is really interesting. I even worked at a VA center there, and we had one of the pastors there was offering Reiki to veterans. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And they had trained some of the long-term care staff to learn Reiki, to offer it to their nursing home patients. And so I was just like, this is really cool. And something inside of me said, this is a really huge step for you to really think about following. And
so tell us a little bit about what Reiki is.
So Reiki,
for people that have never heard of it or don't know it.
Reiki is a very old form of energy medicine coming out of Japan, and it's really about bringing harmony and balance to your body through your energy system. I know as a nurse, you are taught about your circulatory system, your skeletal system, your endocrine system, all the body systems, right? But the one system that no one talks about is the human energy system, and that system has been so neglected and so ignored, but that is the system that governs so many things, not only in your physical body, but in your life, in the world. It just has such a huge impact. And when we don't, just like if you don't take care of your cardiovascular system, right, and you don't take care of your heart and your arteries, you're going to be unwell. Well, it's the same thing with your energy system. When you don't take care of it, you're going to be unwell. So for me, that was such a huge thing. Like, this is the piece that we're missing. This is how we are not connecting and why these other therapies aren't working. As I mentioned, I worked most of my career with veterans. If anybody has severe trauma, severe drama, and so many different symptoms, it's veterans. And I was looking at them, watching them go and continuing year after year, going to the doctor, doing everything they said, and increasing the amount of medications they're on, but they're still not well. How can that possibly be? I mean, I'm doing everything you say, but I'm still not well. So really marrying those two things, my personal story and veterans, how they were not being well, it really was a driving force for me to look further into this. And so
you learned Reiki. I know that. You're a Reiki Master, which is it the highest level of Reiki?
Yes, I'm a master teacher. And like I said, my breadcrumbs, I didn't learn Reiki in New York. Around the time that I got really interested in Reiki, I was actually very much guided to move to Oregon. And when I got to Oregon, I immediately looked for a Reiki Master teacher. And I had never experienced Reiki before, but I just kept hearing this word everywhere, and I just knew that there had to be something to this, right? Why is this all of a sudden in my life? Why is this breadcrumb constantly in my face? So when I got here, I found a wonderful teacher. Her name is Michelle Garnier-Winkler from Create Healing in Portland, Oregon. Well, now she's in New York, but we traded spots. I came to Portland, and then she but she was amazing, and she just totally opened up my world. And I was just so excited about how I was feeling after something so simple had such a profound effect on my health and wellness.
Yeah.
And this really inspired me and guided me to bring this to the medical profession. how do I marry this into a medical profession, especially a veteran, facility where they are so in desperate need of this modality.
Yeah.
So I made every chance I could get. I was offering Reiki at veteran events and events in the hospital and organizing different volunteers to help out. And I have to tell you, veterans were getting off the table, and they were practically levitating. They were so excited. I mean, and all I would give them is about 10 minutes. So it wasn't even a full-on normal, what they would consider a normal session. With just 10 minutes, they were like, I don't know what you just did to me, but that was amazing, and I feel amazing. And how do we get this into the VA? So it really became my driving forces. How do I change a federal healthcare system?
No small obstacle there.
No.
But you did it, and I was witness, so tell us more what happened.
This is all Susan's fault, I will tell you that right now.
I'm an innocent bystander.
She started this whole thing. I mean, I have to give props where props are due, and Susan was very much a driving force about, helping me. When I came to Portland, I didn't know anybody at all. And I remember that Susan was running a program that I was involved with. And her and I were talking
at the VA. Yeah, at the VA.
At the VA. And I remember we were talking about the program because I had some questions. And for some reason, I was just really guided to tell you, oh, I'm a Reiki Master. And then you're like, oh, I'm a shaman. And then you were like, hey, have you found community since you moved to Oregon? And that was just such a huge thing for me. It was like, no, I'm on this journey. I have no way to know which way to go. I'm an infant in this journey, and you opened the door to this whole new way of life for me and just giving me unity and community in a way that supported my journey in a way that I couldn't even have possibly imagined. So I just thought you guys should know that she's pretty awesome.
I will take the credit for standing at a crossroads and pointing my finger. That's about all I did. You did all the rest of the work, girl. Oh, but it's been fun. And how many times do you have that kind of a conversation in a government facility?
Exactly. It's like, and you always feel kind of weird about that, right? You're like, okay, I'm in this professional thing, but it just, like I said, you feel guided to tell somebody your story. If you ever feel that, do it, because there's a reason, and you don't know how it can change their life, and you definitely don't know how it's going to change your life. If I did not say that to Susan, I would probably still be back at square one. But
and I have to tell you, I remember that conversation, and I don't go there, but it's spirits like nudging me, and literally, it was like, ask her if she's got a community, ask her if she's got a plan. I'm like, okay, never knowing what that would mean or if it was important to you. We were there to discuss business and what we were getting paid to, and this other conversation came about just because we were both listening, and look what happened.
I know, that is so crazy.
And a good friendship, but also so many people have been helped. So, the crazy thing is, no surprise here, but Maria and I were not the only woo-woo people in the VA. So why don't you tell them what happened next?
Well, I was really excited about the veteran response to receiving Reiki, and I just felt really strong about how do I get this as a full-time offering in the VA. Like, how do I do that? And if anybody worked for a federal agency before, you know that the red tape is tremendous, and there is no guidebook for anything. You just got to kind of figure it out along the way, and you never know who to ask, and then you think you asked the right person, and then that person's like, oh, no, now you got to go ask. It's just a crazy mess. Mm-hmm. But I kept pushing forward, trying to navigate this craziness. And one day, I'm standing at the copy machine. And this is a copy machine, mind you, that I stand at every single day. And I see the same poster every single day. But I wasn't allowing myself to look at what was available to me, right? What was the next step? But that day I was really like, okay, I need some guidance here. Like, how do I do this? And I look up and I see this poster and I decide I'm going to read this poster. And I'm telling you, this is not a small poster. This is probably a 2-foot poster. And it's a poster about a project that a bunch of nurses did 7 years prior. And and it had to do with Reiki. And I was like, okay, what the heck happened to this thing? I mean, it's not here. I know it's not here. I've done my homework on that part, and nobody's talking about it. So what the heck happened? Well, there just happened to be some emails on the poster. So I emailed these people hoping they still worked there. I mean, it was 7 years ago. And I get a response back. And the response is that we belong to a integrative health committee here at the hospital, but we are not officially sanctioned by the hospital. So basically, anything that we do really doesn't gain any traction because we don't have the hospital's blessing, basically. Mm-hmm. And I just knew, again, that this couldn't be a coincidence. So I emailed them and I said, I want to be part of this committee, so just tell me what I got to do. And they're like, well, we'll let you know. A couple of weeks later, I get an email that says, welcome to the committee. And, oh, by the way, we just got officially sanctioned by the hospital. That was not a coincidence.
I don't think so.
Again, I'm repeating, they were in existence for 7 years. You know, the thing, though, is when I got to the committee, because we are officially sanctioned, the hospital now wanted plans, you know, what we planned on doing. And because I was the Reiki person and I was passionate about that, they wanted me to write a plan for how that would look to the hospital. Mm-hmm. And the interesting part is most of the people on that committee had been on the committee since its inception 7 years ago. And their reality to them was, even though we're officially sanctioned, the hospital administration has not changed. And no matter what we do, it's never going to happen. You know, that was because if that happened,
that's what they were creating. That was their reality.
So
I don't know if you know this, but ironically, I went to those first classes 7 years before you found this. You know, I was so excited. I was like, what? Yeah, I'm going to do this. I think it was an email I got. And I went, and it was very basic, but it was good. It's like, hey, this is the start. They were teaching nurses and anyone who wanted to know just basic energy work. And, oh, my goodness, I just thought, finally, because my path was similar to yours, where as a nurse, I'm like, something's not working. I don't know what it is, but I know we're missing an important piece, you know, and eventually I stumbled on the energy work, and you know the rest is history. But that was the piece. It's like, this is it. This is what we're missing. And so I was so excited in the VA system as a nurse to find this. And of course, we had those first few classes, and then nothing. And you know, I kept saying, well, what else are we doing? And you know, and I just kept getting stopped. And so thank goodness, unlike me, you went and did something about it.
Well, again, it was about following those breadcrumbs, right? All of these things started to align in a way that it just could not be ignored. And although the people on the committee were very, you know, again, they were like, well, just letting you know, don't be disappointed because it's really highly unlikely that this is going to happen. But I don't know if you guys have ever saw the movie The Lorax. It's a kid's movie. And in that, there's this boy. And in his world, there are no trees anywhere, okay? But he's in love with the girl next door, and all the girl next door wants for her birthday is a tree. Now, in their reality, again, there are no trees, so how is that possible? Well, this kid follows a breadcrumb that leads him to this person he's told knows where it happened to the trees, okay? And he goes to that guy, and he's like, I'm going to get a tree for this girl, you know? And the guy says to him, I'm so glad you're not deterred by things like reality, because in this boy's reality, he was getting a tree. There is in no way in any existence that he was not going to be leaving and getting a tree for the girl next door. And that was my reality. No matter what people were telling me about their personal experiences, that wasn't my reality. I was going to do this. I was going to change things. And I did do it alone, obviously. I couldn't have done it alone. I had a great bunch of support from so many people who were willing to jump on the crazy train. And what happened was, when they asked me to write up that proposal, I sat down. Now, mind you, I'm an LPN, okay? I'm being asked to do things I've never done before. And I sit down to write this, and I can't write a word. And I'm thinking, why can I not write anything? This is what I've been dreaming of. This is what I've been wanting to do. But I couldn't translate the language of energy medicine in a way that doctors and nurses could really understand it.
Yeah.
So I kind of was like, okay, what do I do? Like, show me what the next step is, because I can't imagine that these kind of really cool, amazing things happened, and all of a sudden we're kind of dead in the water. That's not right. Well, it didn't take me long to get my answer. I went to one of the next meetings, and there was a conversation about, hey, I don't know if you guys are interested, but we have the opportunity to be part of a national grant that will be across several VA hospitals in the nation. It's $500,000, and we are going to be training staff in some complementary medicine techniques like healing touch. And I was like, healing touch. I said, I've never heard of it, so let me look into it because I'm intrigued, you know. Well, I looked into it. It's Reiki, but it was created by a retired Navy nurse. It spoke the language of doctors and nurses, and it was accredited. If anybody knows anything about hospitals, they love when things are accredited. And so I was like, oh, my God, this is it. This is totally what I've been looking for. I didn't have to read.
It was the language that you were looking for. It was the doctor, Western medicine language is what it was, yeah.
And so they would easily be able to understand this. The other piece that I felt was really, really important was I needed to get doctors and nurses on a table to experience this themselves. So I arranged not only for myself but other people who are trained in this technique to be at any event we could possibly be at and offer it to doctors and nurses, because you can't prescribe to something you have not personally experienced and feel that it's valuable.
I agree.
And because
it's like there's no trees and they don't know what a tree looks like. You have to show them what the tree looks like.
Exactly. They don't have any point of reference for this. In their world and their reality, it can only be, medication and therapy. How could something so simple be so effective? It just seems illogical to them.
So let's stop here for just a moment and talk a little bit about what that technique is.
Healing touch?
Yes, it's called Healing Touch. It was started, I think, in the 80s, right, by this nurse. And
yes.
So they've had a long row, many decades of working on formulating energy work in, like you said, in this language of Western medicine where it could be implemented as a Western medicine practice in their language.
And what I really appreciated is they did their homework, right? They really went out into the world and looked at what were the best case practices. Just like any normal doctor, nurse, or hospital, they always look for the best case practice because that is what you want to use with your patient population. So they really did that. They did their homework from a nursing perspective of what is the best case practices, what are the most effective energy techniques out there that have been proven that we can make into a program and tailor it in such a way that it's not only speaking the language of doctors and nurses, but can be symptom-based. So if you have a headache, they have a technique just for that. Or if you're having chronic back pain, they have a technique for that. So really, again, speaking the language that doctors and nurses could totally understand in an easy way.
Mm-hmm. You know what I love about this story, Maria, is, you got stops in your path. You're like, what do I do? I'm trying to write this thing. I don't have the language. I don't have the experience, and you just put it out there to spirit. It's like, help me. What's the next step? What's the next breadcrumb? And then in comes this healing touch thing that at the time you didn't know about. that, was pretty much what you were doing already, in a sense, with the Reiki and energy work that you were doing. But it was like decades of work that had been done. It was like put into your lap. Here, there's this. You didn't have to reinvent the wheel. You didn't have to do it over again. It had already been done for you. And I love it when we're stuck, when we ask for help and we're trying to create something, like that tree that nobody's seen before. It's like Spirit, the universe already knows. It's got some really good stuff for us if we just ask and then watch. And here it comes.
And be open to receive. It's when we limit our possibilities. When we get in our head, we only have a certain amount of outcomes that we can think of in our brain. Well, let's face it, we only use a certain part of our brain. We don't even use our whole brain. So how could we possibly fathom the infinite possibilities that are out there?
Yeah.
So really opening ourselves up to be in allowance of what else could I possibly do? What else is another? If I didn't sit there and ask that question, I would have tried to toil away to make it work, and it wouldn't have worked.
Exactly. It would have taken you decades of doing what they had already done, which was not time conducive for what needed to happen. But I think the other important thing here is that Maria could have really easily, and I know we all do this, it's like, well, wait, Reiki is what I know, or this format is what I know. This is what I thought would work. So, no, I'm going to say no to this healing touch thing because this is not the avenue I was thinking I needed to do, right? We all do that.
Exactly.
It's like our brain knows what it knows, and we've had our own experiences, so we make our best plan. And it's good to start out that way, but as you ask for help and help comes, be open-minded to something completely different that you have never thought of. It would have been really easy for her to say, I don't know what this healing touch thing is. Those people are doing their thing, I'm doing my thing, and she would have missed that. So why didn't you miss it? What made you look? What made you look at that when it came along? What made you think that was a good idea?
It was really the timing of it all. Like I kept saying before, when breadcrumbs, and I feel like it's like this, I always say this word wrong. Is it synchronicity, right? Everything just flows, and it has this synergy, and it just keeps building on top of something else. It's a bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was just like I just kept seeing all of these signs, right? For me, signs come up in different ways. Either they come up in numbers or in animal. I see these specific animal over and over again, or I just keep hearing a certain word or a certain song comes on. And it's just like when these things keep happening in a pattern, it's like, pay attention. I'm trying to guide you in the right direction, and like you said, if you ask for something and something shows up, don't poo-poo it, even if it comes up in a package that you totally do not recognize, it's showing up because this is going to bring you bigger, better, more than you can possibly imagine, and honestly, like you said, considering my background, I totally could have stepped away, right? I totally could have been like, I'm being asked to do this big, huge, impossible thing. I am being asked to change a healthcare system, a federal healthcare system. How does little old me do that, right? We can get into our little selves and really be afraid to step up and step out. And, especially because I'm definitely going against the grain, even among my committee members. So many of them.
Oh, yes.
No, honey.
In some ways, they were your biggest obstacles. I remember.
Yes.
Like, wait a minute, what are you guys trying to do here?
I was always so
because
surprised.
They were.
It's like inside was the inside.
Yeah, well, it's like I said, it's like you could get really set, like, no, it's got to be Reiki, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. It's what we've always done. This is what we do, right? This is what humans do. And I know it's a survival technique because when we go out of our little nest and out of our comfort zone, that's scary stuff, and you might get hurt or you might get killed or who knows what, horrible thing will happen. And so we tend to stay in our little comfort zone and we don't go past that. I get it. But when we don't go past that, we miss these big opportunities that Spirit's like, here it is. You wanted some help? Okay, here is this huge
big thing.
And thanks to Maria, she took it and ran with it.
Well, I couldn't have done it alone. I really couldn't have. And when we got that news, I literally called up the people who are local to RVA who were going to be my support system, right? One of them actually helped write the grant that was being offered. And so I called them. They have no idea who I am. They've never met me before. They don't know anything about me. And I just called them up, and I'm like, hey, would you mind having a meeting with me and, talking to me about this? Again, back then, I was very much, I'm only an LPN. How can an LPN do this? I'm going to call these people. And they, I had them up on a pedestal. I mean, come on, they're working on national grants, and here I am, just taking blood pressures, It's just like I didn't feel that it was equal playing field, but I held my breath and just said, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to call them. And they showed up. And I was like, okay, so this is who I am, and this is what I do, and I think this is amazing, and what do you think you want to, come on this crazy ride with me? And they were just like, yeah, let's do it. And they had to step into a scary realm because none of us had worked on a grant before, and all of the things that the federal government makes you do and do again and do again. And so there was so much that all of us needed to step into a new role. But it was amazing to see how we all came together, and we all just really created this environment that we were able to train almost 80 staff members in this technique. And the synergy that we got from that. People were just, not just veterans, but staff were talking about it. And I was able to start and pilot a one-day-a-week clinic, and I was getting some pretty, sick veterans. Most of the time, doctors would send me, patients that they didn't have any other options for them. And I remember the very first veteran I ever worked on. And this veteran had severe traumas in their life, was in extreme amounts of pain, was taking every pain medicine under the sun, and still never getting below a 10 in pain on the pain scale.
0 to 10, 10 being the worst. Yeah.
Exactly, 10 being the worst. And when we were done, and because of the pain, they had very limited mobility. They could barely move their arms. They used a wheelchair very often. They weren't sleeping well. They slept in a chair because sleeping in a bed was just, too uncomfortable, and just tons and tons of things. And when we got done, this veteran sat at the side of the table and just started bawling. And they're like, you don't understand. I'm at a 0. I haven't been at a 0 in a decade.
Pain scale. No pain.
No pain, 0 pain. And this wasn't just like, and they were surprised. They were just like, I can't believe this. And they went out in the hallway and stopped every doctor, every nurse, every patient in the hallway to say, look what I can do. I can move my arms. I feel fantastic. I don't have any pain. And I remember I saw them the next week, and they were just like, I had pain relief for several days. And the person was like, well, the only reason my pain is back is because I felt so normal that I started moving the furniture around in my house that had desperately moved.
Oh, no.
But I just thought, wow, how amazing is that? That something so simple with 0 side effects is going to make such a huge impact on someone's life. How do we expand on this? And so I just kept working away at it. I helped organize ongoing support for those who learned the technique. So we held monthly practice circles. We were at every event that we could possibly be at, be it an employee event or a veteran event. And what I started to do was I started to kind of ask them, what was your your level beforehand, what pain level or anxiety level or, were you at beforehand? And then what level are you at when we were done? And when I started keeping that information and showed it to one of the hospital staff, and I was just like, what do you think about this? Because it looked pretty impressive to me, but I'm not a person who knows anything about statistics. And they were like, wow, this is pretty amazing. We should write this up. Like, okay, can you help me with that? Because I have no clue how to do that. And so they helped me put it all in legible kind of formatting and graphs and charts and stuff. And we got to present it, my colleagues and I, we got to present it at a poster presentation for a Worldwide Healing Touch conference. We also got to present it with some other of our colleagues for the National Director of Patient-Centered Care. This is a big deal, okay? This happened to be in the Portland metro area. She wasn't even coming to the VA, but our group had heard that she was coming to the area, and we were just and asked her if she would come to the VA and look at what we're doing and how she could help us. And because of that, she was very impressed. And she had approached our director and said, listen, this is a new program, this whole new Office of Patient-Centered Care, but I want to see Portland be the shining star of integrative health nationally. I want them to be the model that every other VA, is modeled after. And that is huge. It really opened the door for all of these people on this committee who'd been in existence for 7 years to really start shining their light brightly to say, here are all these great, wonderful things that we can offer veterans that really can have a huge impact on their health and wellness. And that's huge.
Tell us a little bit about the findings from your research. What did you find?
I found that when I was doing this, that after 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, that they were having humongous decreases in pain and anxiety. I mean, either slashing it by half or more in some cases. I mean, and you couldn't ignore it. It was just such a stark difference.
Let me just remind the listeners that these are veterans that have been for years taking heavy doses of medication for pain and for anxiety. This isn't just somebody walking in off the street. These are hardcore patients that the doctors had tried everything that Western medicine had to give. These are the kinds of people that very high acuity is what we'd say in the medical field. Very high acuity, very multiple problems, multiple symptoms. These are the people she's working on and getting these kinds of results with. And so
the thing is even veterans didn't really have a lot of knowledge about this, right? And
right.
These veterans are for the most part very stoic. They don't really talk about their pain or anxiety. But the great thing was they didn't have to talk about anything, right? They didn't have to revisit and swim in that trauma or drama. They just had to show up and be willing to, do the work with me that day. That was it. They just need to lay back and enjoy and, really get a sense of how they can have a whole new life with this new sense of wellness that was being created. But the important part is that people need to understand is this was an energetic component. That is why, even though they were doing all the therapy, even though they were taking all the medications, they still didn't have their lives back. They still were not feeling well because we were missing the energetic component. You know how that really hit home for me is when we took one of our Healing Touch classes, we had a veteran come in, and they were a below-the-knee amputee. And we were assessing the energy field. And you would think that someone who has a below-the-knee amputation, that there would be no energy to assess in the area where there is no leg. But when we assessed that person's energy field, their energy field showed up in the way that it looked like the leg was still there.
Yeah, I think this is where phantom limb pain comes from.
Exactly. It totally explains phantom limb pain because in your energetic system, your body is still whole. Yes, it can be damaged, but it's still whole in its existence. And so that really explained a lot of things for me. I mean, for me personally, especially, I had suffered from chronic pain since the age of 5. And I had every test imaginable done, and everything always came up, nope, we don't have a diagnosis for you. And several years ago, the pain had gotten to the point that it was really impairing my mobility. I had to start making some decisions because I didn't know that I could continue nursing because my mobility was being impacted. And then the pain had started to affect my strength. And so I was really having some problems with gripping things, and it was just really getting worse. And I didn't know what to do. Well, along comes energy medicine. And in one of our Healing Touch classes again, one of the other students and I, we were practicing on one another, and she was doing an assessment on me. And she asked me a question about, do I have any chronic pain issues? And I said yes. And she's asking some other questions, and then she comes to a question where she says, have you sustained any significant traumas? And I said, oh, yes, plenty, which I could have talked about that for days. But she just tuned in and said, I want to know, when was the first time you experienced the trauma? And without even thinking, I knew exactly. At 5 years old. I was molested at 5 years old. And then she looks at me and she says, when did you first start feeling the pain? 5 years old. That is huge. I had allowed that trauma to physically manifest pain in my body. When I realized that and we did some techniques together, I no longer have chronic pain. I have my mobility back. I totally understood at that moment how this was affecting our veterans. Our veterans are coming back from war with such severe trauma. How, if we are not addressing the energetic system, are they going to be well? It's not a hard leap to understand that they are physically manifesting pain by holding on to these traumas in their energetic system.
I agree.
So it's just been, this whole process is kind of a duality. I'm doing work on myself and really helping my.
You there?
Are you
there?
there? I'm here. For some reason, my phone just died.
Okay, we're back. Let me just take a moment since we have this natural break. This is Susan Fullmer, an All Things Woo-Woo radio show with student radio at Boise State University, the University Pulse. And I'm with Maria Anderson, Wellness Facilitator, and we've been listening to an amazing journey of her life and as a healer and intuitive. So, where were we?
Oh, boy, so we were changing the world.
Yeah, and let's continue, shall we?
Yeah.
So you're talking about veterans. You work with veterans.
Yes. We've been working with veterans, and it was just so beautiful to see how we were able to not only impact the veterans' lives, but all of these nurses who were, and not just nurses. We had doctors take it. We had social workers take this class. We had a lot of different staff members take this. But
we had secretaries. I mean, any employee in the VA could take this class, which was pretty cool.
Exactly. And, I mean, just the logistics of that, right? I mean, to create the space to have these classes over and over again, and the amount of dedication it took and the amount of time and the manager support. I mean, I literally would hold meetings with managers and say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I really like to see happen. Can you support this? If one of your staff members wants to come, would you support them coming? And it was just so amazing to just, every time I was challenged to step up, every time I was challenged to be seen and stand in my power, which had been a really big struggle for me. I was always supported every step of the way, every time. This information was then shared with our director and our chief nursing officer, and people were just talking about it. And at the time, in the beginning, I was working at a resident clinic at the VA, which is basically all of the doctors who are in training. And there are a lot of doctors who are in training who come through that clinic. And I remember one of the doctors said, I can't go anywhere in this hospital or the hospital across the street without hearing your name. I was like, oh, really?
Which equates to a lot of work on your part, because you were getting the word out. You really worked hard to do that. I know you did.
But again, it was just about following that path that was just being led me, I was being led on. And I remember you and I, it just seems impossible, right? I remember plenty of times walking home from work, and we would just go, did that really just happen? And we would just laugh, because it just seemed so impossible. These crazy things would just shift automatically, and it's like, how did that happen? But when we allow ourselves to be led, and we allow ourselves to be open to all of these amazing possibilities, things shifted so fast. I remember you kept saying, you don't get it. You don't get it. Like, people have been trying to do this for years, and you're just coming in here doing it effortlessly. Like, and you just say, okay, we're going to do this, and it just happens. And
No, I think the exact quote was, people have been trying to do this for decades, Maria. You don't understand. Not years, but decades, literally. I've been a nurse for 34 years, and yeah. When things snowball, they snowball. But I think the timing was important, but also, you coming in, it just all happened in a beautiful way. And but certainly you were the instigator of all of this craziness. I think the VA didn't really know what happened. Like, whoa.
Exactly. But the beautiful thing that I think that really, besides being able to do what we did, which was huge, I think what was beautiful was that so many people were inspired to totally think about creating their life in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they just felt empowered to follow that dream, to see different possibilities in life. I mean, to really feel how the energy in itself is shifted in this facility was huge.
Yeah. Yes.
It really was a ripple effect. People were having these beautiful experiences personally, professionally, with their patients. I mean, it just snowballed. And it was so beautiful to watch that.
It really was.
You just forget about that, right? You're so focused on the work. But then somebody says, somebody you don't even necessarily know, we're like, oh, you know what? I'm doing this because of you. Thank you. You opened that door, and I just thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. So I encourage listeners all the time, and, my clients, it's just like, if you have a burning desire in your heart to do something, do it, because it's there for a reason. Listen, we all have those naysayers in our head. We have naysayers in our physical life who are like, no, sorry, that's never going to happen. But in reality, when you choose to do it, it can totally happen, and in ways that you couldn't even possibly imagine.
Yeah. And I think, I know I get really frustrated with the timing, like, oh, this, I want to do this. And when it doesn't happen immediately, I'm like, why? But, just keep at it. I keep thinking about the story. You're working as a nurse in the clinic at the Portland VA. And I remember you approached the doctors and said, hey, I've got this thing. Let's do it. And what did they say? They all said no.
No. And
no.
Over and over, every month, said the same thing. And it was so funny to me is one day they were like, oh, what is this cool thing you're doing? And I looked at them like they were talking another language, because I'm like, are you serious right now? I've been seeing this for like months. years almost.
I think it was more like a year you had been talking to them, and so tell them. I remember the story of how the snowball kind of got started. I mean, I think you were planting seeds from the first time you were asking them, even though they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think on some unconscious level they know those seeds were planted, that you were talking to them about this stuff. But I remember there was like 2 or 3 veterans that were in really bad shape. Do you remember?
They were coming
you tell the story.
Yeah, they were coming to see me, and one of the veterans, again, was a chronic pain patient, and the doctor that this patient worked with was a pain doctor. That was their specialty. And the doctor, I think, just kind of sent them to me because, they were tired of me bugging them.
Well, as I remember you saying, you're like, okay, here's this veteran who's even suicidal because his quality of life is so poor. We can't go any higher on the doses of medications because he's maxed out. It would kill him if we gave him any more. We have done absolutely everything we know to do. And I remember you telling me, you said, what would it hurt if I did this energy work on him? And he kind of threw up his arms and he's like, all right, do it. Yeah. And that happened like with 2 or 3 veterans. And then what happened?
Yeah. And so these veterans were getting better. This happened with several different veterans. And they were getting better. And I was just like, what are you doing to them? I'm really not doing anything, It's just like, I'm doing what I told you I was going to do. And that really piqued some of these doctors' interest, that they decided to take the classes and learn the techniques, because they were huge improvements with their veterans that they'd been working with for years that were not having any improvements. When a veteran comes and says, I feel pretty good today, that's a huge thing that you need to know. And how did that happen exactly? Because you weren't feeling this way for the last several years. And so I really applaud them for going, okay, we can't deny this anymore. We need to pay attention. So it was really, again, it was so beautiful to see how this just kept snowballing. And, it was great because, I guess I never thought of myself as the content expert, right? But if I unofficially became the content expert. It's like, hey, if you have a question, go ask Maria Anderson. It's like, oh, she could help you with that. And she knows all about that. So it was just really, really, really cool.
Okay, we had a little bit of glitch there, but so the doctors, when they started seeing the outcomes, when they finally said yes to you and you're working on their veterans that they'd been working on for years, we're starting to see results. And so not only did they start taking these Healing Touch energy work classes at the VA that you were organizing, you started getting all of these calls and messages from doctors saying, okay, how do I get more patients in there? How do I send more people to you?
Yeah, and again, it was a team effort. There were lots of other people. We had some people on our Vancouver campus who were really forging, the trail over there. And, people who are just passionate about the effectiveness of this. Each of us holding this sacred space, holding this energy so that it could truly transform healthcare. I feel like that is my biggest calling in life is, people ask me why I don't call myself a healer. And I don't do that because, for one, I feel like healer insinuates that I'm doing something to you, that you get to show up, lay down, or, sit, talk to me, and I do all the work. But that's not how it works. Mm-hmm. It's really, when I work with somebody, it's about them making a conscious choice to transform their life, them showing up in a way to allow the work that needs to be done to get done that day. And I really sat with that for a while because I always felt uncomfortable calling myself a healer. And I said, well, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish here? And my biggest goal was to help people create wellness in their life. So how was I doing that? I was helping them facilitate that. So that is where the word wellness facilitator came about. And I really love that term because I feel like one of my big goals in life is to take the woo-woo out of what we do. You know, this needs to be mainstream. This needs to be mainstream. This needs to be, you know, a title just like, you know, an RN or an LPN or, you know, a medical assistant, whatever those letters are after somebody's name. Well, WF needs to be a title after someone's name, wellness facilitator. It needs to be the mainstream and not the, you know, the abnormal, the, you know, kind of fringe science. The thing is, there's this great line in the movie Thor where he's talking to the female character and he's like, in your world, magic and science are two different things. But in my world, they're the same. Listen, because people don't understand and because science has not caught up to how to, because listen, our scientific data collection is flawed. There's only certain ways to collect that data to make it valid, right? But how do you measure something that you don't understand?
Or
right?
even know exists.
Exactly.
You don't know to ask the question, maybe.
Exactly. You don't know how to measure what is going on. And so really it's about science catching up to what we do. It's not the other way around. You know, this is not something that just happened, you know, this year or in the last 10 years. This is ancient wisdom. This is ancient techniques that have served people for many, many, many years.
Yes.
So it's really about science catching up to us. There is no magic. It seems magical because, I mean, in our reality, nothing this simple could possibly work that great. But it's not magic. It's just totally energetic. And, again, science needs to catch up with a way to measure this in a way that they can make it valid in their world. But you can't discount testimony after testimony from people. Like I said, these veterans had no clue what they were getting into, right? So they didn't have any preconceived notion how this could be effective to them.
Right.
And then them just showing up and being like, wow, that was amazing and I feel amazing and I'm still feeling amazing days later. You can't deny that kind of testimony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they are fortunately putting more money into research on all kinds of alternative healing, from acupressure or acupuncture to, you know, healing touch and all of this. So it's coming, but it's just, I think some of us on the front line where it's like it's got to come faster. It's got to be here now. We can't just keep waiting because people are, you know, I think the healthcare consumer is not getting what they need always, and there's just so much more, you know, especially when we look into alternative medicine, which is much more on the preventative side. How do you stay healthy? You know, how do you strengthen your core and strengthen those things? How do you keep your energy balanced and clear so that the physical is not breaking down?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And it's just, you know, it does take time. But the more we stand up and say, you know, we need something different. We're no longer going to accept the status quo as only option for us. You know, we are the consumer. We have that choice to say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. This isn't working for me. You know, I've tried the 10 different pills and they all didn't work. And I'm not anti-medication. I'm not anti-Western medicine. When it works great. But what I'm saying is, let's have a collaborative. Let's have offerings, because truly I feel it's not a one-size-fits-all. You know, in my personal work, I don't just use one technique or one technique that I've been trained in. I use a variety of techniques that I've been trained in because one size doesn't fit all for every patient. It's about what's best for them, with their energy, where they're at in their process, to really help them make those transformations and help them be well again.
Amen, sister. Good stuff. Yeah. Well, listen, we need to wrap things up, but there's a couple things I want to address before we go. I think you and I could, and we do, we go on and on about this stuff. Obviously we're both very passionate about this subject and seeing healthcare. Like I said, like you said, I'm not anti-Western medicine at all. I think it has, certainly it has its forte. It's just, we need that marriage, Let's have more choices. Mm-hmm. Let's have more depth in what we're doing. Let's look at the whole body, and on and on. So, a couple things I want to get to. I want to hear a little bit more about what you're doing in your private practice. Wellness facilitator, but I know that for you specifically, that means a variety of things. Can you just touch on some of those things that you do in your private practice?
Yes. So I do wellness facilitation, and I do that via phone or video chat. So then again, it is available to anyone in the world. I literally have clients in Spain. I've worked with people in the UK. So giving people the opportunity to do that is just really amazing. So I'm really enjoying that. But as I mentioned before, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So some of the other things that I offer are wellness through group or corporate retreats. I do have some retreats coming up. I have one retreat that is a women's retreat here in Oregon, and that is going to be June 9th through the 12th. And then I have another really exciting once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be on a retreat, and this is open to anyone, in Panama.
Mm-hmm.
And it is going to be amazing. I mean, I can't even tell you how excited I am about this. We are going to be up close and personal with whales and dolphins, really learning about how they themselves are wonderful healers. We are going to be doing meditations in the ancient rainforest of Panama. We're going to be also visiting with an indigenous tribe that lives in the Panamanian rainforest. I mean, just these experiences that you would never think to have in your whole life, but it's all around health, wellness, and healing. I mean, it is just going to be fantastic.
And tell us just a little bit about Anne, because I know she's a key component in all of this.
Yes, she is a key component. She was a breadcrumb. She approached me and asked if I would be interested in coming to Panama. Her name is Anne Gordon de Barrigon, and she is a biologist and a certified dolphin energy healer. And she does whale and dolphin healing wisdom retreats out of Panama. She is an amazing woman who has so many talents, and I really appreciate that she brings the science and the energy medicine together. She brings her background in biology as a biologist and just really brings this whole nother level of healing and understanding to her retreat process. And so her and I will be facilitating this retreat in Panama together. So I'm super excited about that.
I am too. I know you've had some webinars on recently. I don't know, are you going to do any more of those?
I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to offer a replay of one of the ones that we taped so people can kind of get a little bit more familiar with what we are doing for these retreats. The one that I'm facilitating with Anne is going to be at the end of August, and it'll be, I think it's August 27th through September 2nd. And I love it because Anne takes care of pretty much everything on her end. I mean, you really just get to come, show up, relax, and really enjoy and really take in this beautiful healing energy. You don't have to worry about much of anything.
And she's done this many, many, many times and has very high ratings, and so you're in good hands.
She followed her breadcrumbs to Panama. I mean, I know that someday soon you'll have her on the show, but she followed her breadcrumbs to Panama, and she 100% started the whale watching business in the country of Panama. There was no business. There was no whale watching anything. People didn't even know there were whales and dolphins there. She was the one who was able to find them and connect with them and literally start a whole industry. I mean, who does that? Who starts a whole industry in a country? You know, but
well, and here's the irony. As I understand it, Panama is like one of the only countries that has whales from both the northern and the southern hemisphere. So
exactly,
whale watching opportunity, and she did it.
She did. She did an amazing thing. You know, being in a country that you don't really know a lot about, and nobody in the country knew how to create this, right? What would be the laws and what would be the licensing, and all of those things had to be created. So, you know, I think that's just another amazing point about when you follow your breadcrumbs and you're able to just kind of say, okay, I don't know how this is going to work, but it's going to work, and everything just falls into place. And, I mean, she was a biologist. How do you go from doing what you were doing and then all of a sudden you're running a whale watching company? I mean, it's so crazy how your life can turn like that, and just to so many beautiful, amazing ways.
Yeah, she's got, and there's more interesting things on her story if you want to look that up. That's not the only interesting thing she's done, but yeah, she's followed some really amazing breadcrumbs, which, as often happens, it kind of culminates into what you're doing now. I don't think any time is wasted in your path. You know, all the things, it may seem very eclectic or discordant somehow, but it just sort of all ties together as you move along. You're like, oh, that's why I needed that piece. Okay, that makes sense to me now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be presenting at conferences and I would be speaking on shows and I'd be facilitating retreats, not only stateside but internationally, I would have told you were absolutely crazy. But because I stepped up and because I followed those breadcrumbs and I allowed myself to say yes to possibilities. I mean, every time a possibility comes up, I have a choice, right? I have a choice. I can say no. I could say, oh, we could go to that place automatically of all the reasons it can't happen. But being in allowance of saying, you know what? This came up for a reason. How can this work? Show me how this can work. And we allow ourselves to be led, and leave the driving to someone else. You just kind of follow along. Hey, it works out amazingly well, beyond your imagination.
That's called living your life without regret. A beautiful thing.
Truly.
Yeah. Well, Maria Anderson, it has been a joy, as always, to speak with you and to reminisce about some amazing things we've done that I hadn't thought about for a while, so that was fun. And just to remember your journey and really how you've made such a huge difference into so many people's lives. I know you were just at a gathering in the Warm Springs Reservation, working on Native American veterans with Healing Touch with you and some of the people that have learned Healing Touch through the Portland VA. You go out now on a yearly gathering that they have there on their sacred land, and I know how much they appreciate the healing that you bring there. So it's just, I don't know, it's a beautiful thing, and thank you for all that you do. Thank you.
Well, I am very, very blessed to be doing what I'm doing now, and I really want to encourage your listeners to, if they resonate with any piece of this story, to contact me. I offer everyone a free 20-minute phone consultation to really just kind of discuss, hey, what's going on with your life and how can I support you in really realizing your dreams and your hopes and really taking you on a path that you couldn't even possibly imagine, And I think you can attest, Susan, that some people are like, oh, well, it's by phone, it can't be that effective. But you and I personally have worked most of the time by phone.
Yep.
I think you can attest in how powerful that work can really be.
That's the beauty of energy work. You do not have to be in the same room. Yes, it's just as powerful. So, if you've never had energy work before and you want to just check it out, Maria's a very safe person, and she certainly, as you can tell, is good at answering questions and clarifying what's going on. So I would recommend contacting her if you have any questions, if you want to check things out a little bit. You haven't lived unless you've had your chakras balanced by a good and reputable practitioner. Some of the comments she was making about the veterans, like, wow, I don't know what you just did. It's really hard to put into words, but to have your energy balanced and flowing properly is the way it's supposed to feel. Let's just put it that way. That it promotes healing and the good stuff. So. Well, all right. Thank you again for joining us. And I've already warned her about this, I'm going to be having her on in the future because she does very detailed things, and I want to get into more specifics about some of the techniques that she uses. If you go to her webpage, you'll see some of that. But we'll have her back on and talk more details. This show really is about demystifying what all this woo-woo stuff is about, to break it down. Whether you're interested in being some kind of a healer or not, we're all intuitive, and so this affects us in some way or another. So it's just good to know, what is this about? What's going on? What's happening? There's no mystery, but it is a mystery in a beautiful way, so we can all get it. This is Susan Fullmer, All Things Woo-Woo, and this is Student Radio at Boise State University at the Pulse, and wish you all well. We'll see if the station is up and running next week. If not, we'll come up with something fun and crazy. As always, this is Susan Fullmer. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.